entertain some questions. In that case, if you have a question, come down to the podium over here, and that way you can ask the question from that podium. But Geoffrey Rowe is the educational director there at the congregation where Gary preaches. If I remember correctly from this morning, he is an engineer actually by trade, and so but does this as well. And I know that he is excited about it from the times that I've talked about it to him. But and so I know that he's going to do a good job in letting us know what this program is all about and trying to explain it to us. So, Geoffrey.
How many times does a person get the opportunity to give a lesson and bump their head in the screen? Yes, microphone's on. Can you hear me okay? Let's imagine we pick on Michael Ashton. Mr. Ashton, how many times have you given a lesson on baptism? I mean, you covered it so thoroughly. Acts chapter 2, Acts chapter 22, Romans chapter 6. You covered it so thoroughly, nobody can wiggle out of baptism. And you've done it maybe 10 times a year. And it happens to be the Wednesday night after you did the best lesson you ever did in your life. Wednesday night, after that Sunday morning fantastic lesson, one of your members comes up to you and says, I had a friend at work today, and they had a question about baptism, but I just couldn't remember the scripture you gave. Well, you know they said baptism for the remission of sins? For, in English, it means because the sins were already forgiven. And you just turn and go, no! I gave you that answer 1,000 times Sunday morning. Why don't you remember it? That's the point of this lesson. The lesson is sometimes we put too much information in front of our children and in front of our adults, and they don't remember it. Give you an example. We're going to go through a lesson here on Bible skills, drills, and thrills. Or at least it sounds like a good icon to put up there, right? We're going to use repetition on you. Show you how you can use repetition on your congregations. We'll turn around and show you what you can take back. I'll give you this PowerPoint lesson if you want to help motivate your congregation to use this. No problem. We'll go through the idea to help motivate your congregation. We'll give you a demo on it. We'll show you some of the results, and then we'll show you some of the future possibilities. Well, Deuteronomy chapter 6 and Romans chapter 12 is going to be our key text for today. They talk about repetition, renewing our mind. But we're also going to talk about immunizing our children. You mean our children haven't taken their innocuous shots yet to protect them from the things of this society? No, they generally haven't. Those sermons that you give. You ever hang out a quiz a month later? What percentage of the number one key point you made in a sermon, as you gave 3 or 4 illustrations for, you gave 10 verses for, what key point do you think they remember 1 month later? Well, ask you better. Out of 100 people in your congregation, what percentage of them remembered? Maybe 5%. Well, if we did that, and we take about 60, 70 people in this picture right here, that means only out of that whole group that listened to your sermon that you spent 5 or 10 or 20 hours designing, pulling out of God's Word, key words, obviously key verses, applications. That's all you got left. That's who you reach that Sunday. It won't be the same people every Sunday either. 5%. Romans chapter 12. We're trying to help the people in the congregation transform their lives. And the only way of transforming their lives is by the renewing of their minds. Romans chapter 12. Well, we know flashcards work. Repetition works, right? The student right there could be studying over and over, or use flashcards. What about children? What are we teaching them? What about our teens? Do we just turn around and take the seed, God's Word, and just sprinkle it out there? Okay, I hope it takes root. I hope somebody comes along and waters it. I hope it gets planted well. No, folks, we want to plant it deep into their minds and their hearts so they'll be able to defend themselves against the attacks of the devil. He says the devil's constantly looking to send his birds down there and pick up that seed off that ground. You know what he's doing? So you turn around, you preach on Sunday morning, you planted that seed right there, it's scattered up on the ground, hasn't got any water yet, hasn't taken any root yet, and on Monday morning, what's the child, what's the little running folks? Well, they get distracted by something else. They don't follow the water, they don't remember what you taught. Or something else comes in and contradicts and takes it away from it. What about entertainment? Oh, it's just innocent entertainment. We know it's not. Practically every single one of those movies is totally without God. And many of those movies are directed against God. So what do those movies do with that seed you planted on Sunday morning? Oh, once again, you planted the seed. The devil's words come and take it away. What about education? Don't get me started on education. I've got 45 minutes on just that.
Turn that one off.
Okay.
It's cutting in and out.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. Education. What's a good definition of an atheist? Atheist just means without God. Can you give me a better description of the science books in the public education schools? They're without God. History books without God. Philosophy without God. Law without God. English without God. Government without God. And we wonder why those birds come down there and swoop down and take that seed that you planted on Sunday? Are you good Bible study teachers that taught on Sunday morning Bible study? No, it gets taken out. And that's why Gary turned around and presented to you. We're losing in the churches of Christ 70 to 90% of our children. Well, let's wait a second. Remember that image we showed of teenagers? That's all you got left, folks. Those others are gone. Remember that story, that image we showed of the children? That's all you got left, folks. Possibly only even one out of all those children. We're losing these children's souls. Not only are we losing their souls because the seed that you plant doesn't take place, we're also losing their souls because of the poison that's getting put into their minds. Poison. You go to rat poison, right? If you ever look at the back of a box, did it ever dawn on you? For every one tiny little part of poison in that box, there's 20,000 parts of good food. It only takes one part in 20,000 to kill the rat. How much is it going to take to kill your child's soul? You can't possibly fit all the animals on that Noah's Ark. How are you going to cover Mount Everest in water? How are you going to feed them for a year? They start to doubt God's Word. No, that poison is right there on the back of the box. We can tell it. It only takes one part in 20,000. And these textbooks, I like science, folks. I'm an electrical engineer at Kennedy Space Center. It's got a lot of good truth and science in it. But it has nothing to do with glorifying God. And it does have poison in there that often kills children's souls. Took me away for 20-some years. Let's look at a typical student goes to class Monday. He might learn something about geology. What does geology teach him? There never was any such thing as a worldwide flood. Isn't that what 2 Peter chapter 3 said they would say? Oh yeah. So therefore they know the Bible's about geology is wrong. What about on Tuesday? Well, on Tuesday he turns around and looks about biology. All the animals came from some preceding life. Well, that's not according to the Bible. So therefore the Bible's biology was wrong. Anthropology. On Wednesday. Anthropology? You mean we all came from Adam and Eve? We all came through Noah and his family? That's right. Not according to their textbooks, is it? So the Bible's anthropology is wrong. What about on Thursday? Astronomy. Well, what came first? The stars or the earth? Well, according to the Bible, the sun, moon, and stars didn't come until day 4. Therefore, we know that the Bible's astronomy is wrong, if you believe those textbooks. What about on Friday? The history of the universe. Best history book in the whole universe is the Bible. What are they taught? Oh, no. We came from monkeys. You can't possibly trust that book you call the Bible. The Bible must be wrong. And then on Saturday, we go into entertainment. Oh, we got to have entertainment now. I mean, we got movies like the Da Vinci Code. They'll turn around and tell you, you know, this modern day, that idea that there were New Testament miracles back then a couple thousand years ago. Oh, that's just like the modern day miracles. They never happened, folks. Jesus Christ never walked on water. The Bible miracles are wrong. And what happens? We often ignore that the devil uses movies that take $20-some million each on average, games that take hundreds of thousands, probably $1 million just to develop these games, and these 3D science illustrations to deceive our children. And yes, it takes millions of dollars to make a lie seem like the truth. And that's what the devil spends at it. You see, when you try to make illusions, it takes a lot of effort.
All these imaginations of aliens coming from another planet, coming down, destroying Washington, D.C., well, they're great imaginations, but they're a lie. And so is evolution in the textbooks. Then we get to Sunday. What happens on Sunday? Oh, no problem. We put the Bible in, right? Well, the kids aren't too excited because they're just stories. It's not the true science. It's not the true history. And then we show them little pictures like this. Cute little pictures of Noah's Ark. And any child with half a brain will say, well, if the ark looked like that, there's no way you could fit all the animals on it. No. So any child learns with a very quick illustration. Well, those Bible stories, they got some errors too. They got to be wrong. You see, in American culture, over 80% claim to be Christians. But did you know only 47% claim to believe the Bible is reliably from God? Did you know children that are brought up in these supposed Christian homes, only 9% claim there's anything such as absolute truth? You got 11 kids there. What does that mean? That's the only one who believes in absolute truth. So when your children are trying to talk to their neighbors or from the denominational world, that's what they believe, folks. This was an entrance study done on freshmen entering college. We know that the Bible commands the fathers to teach their children. Now let's take Deuteronomy chapter 6. And I want you to get images in your head, not for you, but for you to take back to your congregation. It says, you shall teach them diligently to your children. And then it says, you shall talk of them when you sit in your house. What would that look like? When you walk by the way, what would that look like? When you lie down, what would that look like? When you rise up, what would that look like? And as a sign on your hand. When they see your hands, they should see something to do with God. When they take a look at your face, it should remind them of God and His Word. Does it? Do our parents really do this? Doorpost, when they walk into the house, this is a place of safety for our children because God's Word reigns supreme right here. And last but not least, in the gates. You know that Supreme Court building? We know in the Old Testament, gates had to do with places where judgment was taken. The judges were in the gates. Well, Supreme Court, they don't like this. But there's Moses with the Ten Commandments in the Supreme Court building up at the top. Yeah, they used to give God some glory in this country. We need to vote. We see repetition everywhere, in all kinds of forms commanded by God. We also easily understand that skills, they require repetition. Let's take the skills of defense. We take the shield of faith, and we turn around and we tell, this shield of faith is here because we have evidence for God's Word. We know this is true. Did you know, though, when you say the word faith out in American culture, that they go to Webster's Dictionary and they look up faith and they get some definition sort of like this. Oh, faith is something that you have in spite of the evidence. So when they talk about biblical faith, they think you're saying, well, you just believe in the Bible, but in spite of the evidence. They don't realize God's always given us plenty of evidence. Not a problem. But that's another lesson for another time. But has your child got the evidence for their soul? In this illustration, it may be hard to see on the screen. You'll notice right here the shield protecting the young man. The shield is being held by his mother, trying to protect her son from the darts of the devil. But eventually that son grows up and he's got to have his own shield, doesn't he? Will he, in the Bible education program that we present? Will he, with what the parents teach their children at home? That's the question. We are transformed by the renewing of our minds. But that doesn't mean watch the TV more. That means take God's Word and make sure it goes over and over and over in our minds. Repetition works, always has worked. What about the skills for offense? Well, we take the sword of truth, right? And that sword, we're supposed to be ready to go into battle with it. And we send soldiers off to battle. Don't we give them all kinds of protection and all kinds of weapons? Sure. So why don't we give our children the sword of truth? Repetition, it works. What about loyalty? If you were to go out and take 1,000 soldiers in the U.S. Army, how many of you think them defect? Probably not too many. You might not even find one. Then how come our soldiers for Christ, these children we raise up to be soldiers, defect? Why do we lose 70 to 90% of them? Something's wrong with our training. We can turn around and take them soldiers for Christ, yes. Look at those men. Do they look like they're just haphazard? Well, I think we'll go over here today, or maybe over. No. They've got a goal, they are organized, they are trained, they're prepared, they got the right armor on, everything. What can we do for our children to do the same? When those soldiers died, they died as loyal U.S. soldiers. When our children die, we're losing 70 to 90%. They're not dying in the right place, are they? We know skills such as playing a piano requires repetition. And some skills that try to train people requires you got to use your head, right? And in this game of soccer, we know that you start at a very early age. You start when the children are very small. Repetition, skill, drill after drill after drill. Repetition works. In fact, we also try to get our students to put on the whole armor of God, and that includes a helmet. So let me ask you this question. Is your child prepared as? Even that mouse knows he needs to be prepared. Has your child put on their helmet? No. You see, we need to get them to practice when they're young being soldiers. The idea of being a soldier, putting on the whole armor of God. And repetition works. Repetition is also commanded in God's Word. The word ponder, study, or meditate. That type of phraseology implies repetition. We find in Joshua 1:8, Psalms 1, a whole bunch more in Psalms 119, Malachi, Ecclesiastes, Proverbs, Luke, Philippians, and 1 Timothy. It is commanded. And what we get as results for repetition? Well, if the kids remember more, don't you think they'll be encouraged? Sure. You think it'll take away their excuse? Well, I just couldn't remember it. Hey, then you need to repeat it. Not a problem. Some of the kids or some adults have a love for the truth, but they're so discouraged because, I'm getting kind of old and I just don't remember things like I used to. No excuse, folks. Repetition works, even for the old. But sometimes we give children too much material. You think they can walk away from your Sunday morning sermon and remember the top 10 key points? Well, maybe you break it down to 3 to 5, and 3 or 4 scriptures for each one. They're not going to remember. You need to choose the points you want them to remember and then repeat those over time. You'll have to whittle it down. Just like a good golf coach. I don't know how many, raise your hand if you ever played any golf. We got a few people here. Golf is a weird game. I got special grips for it. I got to keep my elbows straight. I got to get back on my heels. I got to keep my hips in a certain way, keep my chin locked. When you go to the golf instructor, does he tell you to do all those things the very first time? No, he just sort of sets you in position, lets you concentrate on 1 or 2 things at a time, and then make you swing, right? And then slowly correcting 1 or 2 things week after week as you go for this training. That's what we need to do with our children. Stop putting so much material out there they can't remember it. And stop using a whole bunch of other textbooks other than this. He's giving us all things that pertain to life and godliness. We leave that life part out, don't we? Repetition. My question for each one of us that you'll want to ask your congregation is, what repetitive things are constantly going into your mind? The football game on Monday night? Is that what your child sees repetitionally going in your mind? That's what he's going to repeat when he grows up. What's repetitionally going into your child's mind? What's being poured in there? Liberal theology? What kind of friends does he hang out with? Evolution? Humanism? All kinds of good TV programs? Of course, good TV? That's probably an oxymoron. But anyways, how can we help this child? He's got so many distractions, it's not going to get through. The seed's not going to take plant. It's not going to grow. So let me show you just here for a few minutes a Bible memory lab. You maybe find this kind of humorous that this program called Super Memo was invented, looks like by some atheists over in Poland. But they don't put anything into their database for questions and answers. You put in whatever you want. They create a program, we use it. And besides, it's the best one I could find out there at the present time. There's other competition, but it's the best one. So you put in Bible material, it'll work. So they spent all these efforts, and we're going to use it to fight what they believe in, which is atheism, by the way. So let me see if I can get to a demo here. Yes. When you start the program, it comes up something like this. In the top little box right up here, okay, mouse. Okay, we'll try another way. There we go. No, it's now gone again. Okay, can you see the cursor? See this top box up here? Just type in whatever you want to type in. No problem, right? Type in any question you want to jog your memory by. And then come right down here in this box and type in the answer. Okay? Or cut and paste right off the internet. Right into the top box, put the answer in the bottom box. Simple enough. Or cut and paste straight out of your Bible software that you got on your computers. Not a problem. Let me show you how this might work. The student, when they call up their account, well, let me see. Let me make this a little bit clearer to you. I want an image in your head first. Michael Hatcher would turn around and have an account that's called Michael Hatcher. It would have questions and answers reserved just for him. If you want other people in the congregation to also have his questions from the Bible study, like we do, then you call it, you make a copy of his and then rename it their name. So now you got all these copies, a separate copy for every single student. There's a reason for that. They press the Learn button, there's instructions. Don't worry about it. You can read that the first time you run the program. The Da Vinci Code. Let's say you turn around and read the Da Vinci Code, an article by Gary Summers that's on our website. Okay? And you say, there's a couple key phrases in there I really want to remember. So I need to review it a few times. So you put in your super memo, go read the Da Vinci Code. And you go out on the web, and you find a link to his article, you paste it right in the top box. And so anytime the computer figures out you need to review this again, it'll pop up in front of you. And you say, okay, I need to go read it. You click on that link, it opens up Internet Explorer, you go read his article. When you finish reading, you come down here and say, show answer. And it simply asks, well, how well did you remember what he wrote? Well, the first time you read it, you turn around and say, well, I've never seen. So you press this button over here. If you remembered it, but you said, there was a real good illustration he had in there, I just didn't remember that illustration. You might press missed right over here. Or you say, hey, I remembered it quite well. I'll press 100%. Notice that the computer right over here figured out you need to review that again in 3 days. This is the first time it thinks you ever solved the question, so it's 3 days later. And I'll go into the repetition history in just a second. But is this the only type of questions you put in there? Let's put another one in there. What did God create on day 3? Anybody remember? About 90%, 9 out of 10 kids that are in our Bible Memory Lab know the answer just like that. Why? Because this is the image that's in their head. It's a panel, 3 panels. One that you look from creation from outer space. You look at it from the water and atmosphere viewpoint, and then you look at it from standing on land. And you just broke it up into days 1, 2, and 3. Now what happened in outer space? Well, on day 1, he made the earth and separated light from darkness. No big deal. So if they had this image in their head, day 3, oh, that's right, that's standing on land. Must be plants and trees and that stuff. Now that's all in blue. Watch what the next question is, though. Let's say they remembered 100%. It says, what did God create on day 6? Now they have to remember the answer before they press the button. So on day 6, there's the rest of the panel filled in for him, pointing to day 6. You notice he turned around and made the animals that lived on the land. And then he made humans. Once they have this image in their head, they know every single day. I got a question for you though. Why does it matter? Is this just Bible trivia? No, folks. If they understand when God created the sun, moon, and stars, then when their denominational friends and some in the brotherhood compromise on evolution and say that, no, Big Bang, the Earth and the Sun were a second-generation star system. What does that mean? That means the sun, moon, and stars came before the Earth. What's the Bible say? The Earth came before the sun, moon, and stars. So you start planting seeds of apologetics, seeds where they'll be ready to give an answer. We don't put Bible trivia in here rarely, okay? Or what about this? Can your children name the 3 law systems contained in the Bible? Called dispensations. They have to name them. Then they got to tell you when were the law systems in effect and what people were they in effect for. Well, you got 4 or 5 parts of this one question. Watch this. It's all done in one image, folks. Everything in purple goes from the beginning of creation all the way to the cross. It means the whole world was on the patriarchal law system until the cross, except the Jews. About 1446 BC, they were given a different law system, selected to be special, and they had a different law system till the cross. And then everybody's under the Christian age system today. This makes it clear an awful lot of errors that show up in denominationalism. You'd sometimes make application to the children's lives, and you ask them a question like this: should you marry someone who's not following God? And then you ask them, well, what happened to people in Noah's day? It wasn't too good. The sons of men saw turned around, took along the sons of God looked upon the daughters of men. Big mistake. And then it says, can a beautiful wife influence a man to do evil? What happened to Solomon? And so they learned this answer right down as an application to their lives. So you get to choose the applications, the apologetics, for wherever the devil is attacking your children. Or put in Bible trivia if you want. Okay? What about something complicated? This only works with high school up through college. Does God's law against adultery only apply to Jews or to Christians today? That's what some people teach. So what do we learn in the Old Testament that might help around this error? And it goes on to ask more. Well, remember Abraham lied to Abimelech? And God appeared to Abimelech in a dream? And he says, I kept you from touching her, and that was a sin that he kept her from doing? You mean Abimelech, he wasn't a Jew. That's right. He's still in our law system, wasn't he? What denomination today violates the second commandment? 9 out of 10 repeated in the New Testament. Which one literally? You can go to the website, see the list of the 10 commandments, and one of them is gone. But wait a second. They still got 10 in the list. Well, how do you get back to 10 if they threw one out? Which one do they divide and make 2 out of? The kids know this too. They know the Catholic Church turned around and threw out number 2 because it talks about idolatry. Doesn't that really sum up the Catholic Church? Yeah. And so they took the 10th commandment, divided it in 2, thou shalt not covet. And they made it 2 out of that one, so they'd still get back to their 10. You see how you're teaching apologetics, ready for them to see. Imagine they're sitting in class one day, and it's a young man about 16, 17 years of age. And he looks over at that girl. He says, wow, she's beautiful. But then this question has come up, and many others go, but she's a Catholic. Well, now you know you don't have 2 choices. Run or convert her. That's just only 2 choices, folks. And you put that in their memory system too. You see, we can turn around and teach kids how to defend their faith and that there is an evidence for it. We love teaching them that you got to have authority for what we do and to teach and preach, right? And we love to use the illustration of Nadab and Abihu. So why don't we just drill this into their minds so where they couldn't forget it the rest of their lives? And so we put in here things like multiple choice. Now this, I think, is my last slide for this particular demo. Why should we make multiple choice? As you all know, multiple choice questions are nowhere near as good as fill in the blank. And fill in the blank is nowhere near as good as asking a question and have them give you an answer in their own words, sentence by sentence. That's called active recall. We have to pull out of their own minds the actual answer. When you do multiple choice, what do? Well, they generally just recognize the answer. You've already said it that way. You showed something, oh yeah, I recognize that. But they don't think about the answer. They don't derive the answer logically. But notice those questions up there. Notice those answers. Did you notice that every single answer is true? Not every single one answers the question, but every single one of those answers is true to something. Let's take a look at it. Nadab and Abihu were given all they needed. The Holy Spirit guided the apostles into all truth. That's a true statement, right? Why do we waste our time putting multiple choice questions out there where the wrong answers aren't true? But you see, if we put truth up there, they'll be learning truth as they read through all the wrong answers. And then they got to select which answer answers the question. And you'll notice the very bottom says, the silence of the scriptures forbids. So they take their mouse, instead of saying show answer, they come up here and select which one is the correct answer. And the computer will automatically score it for them. They press on here, it's blue, there's the answer. And of course, kids love illustrations and pictures. Go on the internet, find the illustrations, put it into their system. This is my children's favorite question. Over and over. I've got some kids that play this over and over and over before you can give them the answer. Did you know that most children and adults, I would say, they can't find the land of Canaan? What is that? I got a picture of the globe right there. We zoom in on Africa, zoom in on part of Egypt right there, tilt on over, and they have to be able to answer 3 things. Where's Egypt? Especially where's the land of Goshen? Where's Midian? Like, you cross over the Red Sea. And then where's the land of Canaan? And so when they say show answer, it then shows the answer. It gets ingrained in their brains. And I think that might be about it. Yes. You can type in anything you want from anywhere to remind you what you want your child to do for taking the garbage out twice a week. You can put that in their system. And you know, how many times your child sometimes doesn't want to do what you tell them to do? It happens a few times, doesn't it? If you put it into their super memo account at home, do they argue with the computer? No! They might argue with you, but they're not going to argue with the computer. And so that question keeps coming up until they get into the habit of doing it. So we can actually put habits into our children's long-term behavior using the exact same system. And you preachers, how about this? You preach on Sunday morning. What if you take your key point and repeat it on Sunday night? And you put it in your super memo system back in your office. And it'll remind you when you need to remind the audience again of that key point. And so 3 days later it says, hey, you need to remind them again. So you inject it for 1 or 2 minutes into that Wednesday night Bible study. And you say, well, the audience didn't seem to remember that too well. And you go answer the question for your audience, essentially, and say, well, you need to repeat it again Sunday. Or if they did well, they don't need to repeat it again for a week. And then it progresses to where it takes less and less time for that repetition to work. And then eventually it says, nothing more to learn. So there's a Bible Memory Lab. Now at South Seminole, here's what it looks like. We have about 9 or 10 computers networked together. And you can see the different students from adults to college to high school in this particular one. All the way to 5th and 6th grade. You'd be amazed at how much these kids can learn. 5th and 6th grade, no problem learning. Repetition, how does it work? Well, we know by common sense that if we want to remember something in our long-term memory, and let's define what long-term memory. Long-term memory is you don't ever see it again for a year and you still remember it. You didn't think about it in a dream, you didn't ponder over it, nobody asked you a question, and it's still there. That's long-term memory. And we know if we review something once today, it ain't going to stick a year from now, is it? We can study today, you can preach the greatest sermon in the world, it's not going to matter, I don't care what it is, they're not remembering a year from now. You can repeat the same sermon, through your whole 30 minutes, repeat the exact same point 10 times in a row, it's not going to be there a year from now. But 10 times in a row is better than none, isn't it? We know that if we repeated something once a day for 10 days in a row, that's better than 10 times in one day. But it's still not going to work for years. The key here is you learn it today, and then 2 to 3 days later, you repeat it again, you review it. If you get it right, you don't repeat it again until about a week later. If you get it right a week later, you don't need it for a month after that. If you get it right then, you don't need it for 3 months after that. If you get it right after that, you don't need it for 6 months to a year to 2-year memory. Here's the bottom line. It'll cost you about 1 minute per day of your time to move 100 to 300 pieces of information into your long-term memory per year. Now, I'm talking about small little pieces, not memorize a whole verse. A whole verse will probably cost you about 10 questions. Okay? But that's what can be done. Your sermons, you can do the 2-minute reviews for your audiences just like I talked about. And there's a series you could actually do. And you could actually move the audience. Long-term memory. I got a question for you, though. We live in America. What Americans really don't like, they don't like seeing the same movie over and over and over, do they? They want to learn something new every time you show up. If you turn around and gave them repetition, the same illustration, Sunday morning, then Sunday night, and then Wednesday night, and a week later, what are they going to say? I already remember that. They don't understand. They need to review it before they forget it. That's the key. If they wait till they forget it, and then you remind them 3 months later, they have to almost start completely over again. But if they'll review it just before they forget it, or halfway before they forget it, it really helps they take the least amount of repetitions to move into long-term memory. It only takes 7 to 10 repetitions to move into long-term memory, as you see on this particular diagram. Now, what are our challenges? Well, if the students don't show up at least twice a week, this system doesn't work, folks. It really likes to work with 3 times a week, but we've been able to make it work on 2 times per week. They leave their Bible study class, they go in this lab for 10 minutes on Sunday morning. They press their personal account, the computer figures out that student needs this question tonight. They go through the questions, comes up and says usually, well, no more questions, okay, fine. They go back and finish their Bible study class. Then on Wednesday night, same thing. They stop, go into the Bible Memory Lab for 10 minutes, and then they go back to Bible study class. And we have 3 different classes that go in and out of this Bible Memory Lab. A far better system, though, would be to turn around and give every single student their own personal memory stick and put it on their home computer. Now you can walk in their home computer, there's their whole memory, their whole database, the questions, how well they've done, their scoring, what needs to be next, sitting right there. And it'll cost you less than $10 per student. Okay? For this. That would be even far more effective. You might have to call them the first few weeks and say, hey, have you done your 10 minutes today or your 5 minutes today? We've done that, but I'll tell you that result in just a second. That is probably the toughest thing to get across to these kids. There's no test, there's no scores, there's no comparison. Because they get nervous about those things. No. Wording the question to compensate for absences. If they weren't there for the Bible study lesson, your question has to be phrased in such a way they understand what the question is. And you have to give the full answer there sometimes. It takes away the peer pressure. And then last, it is so easy for them to remember that they don't think they're learning anything. So after about 3 to 6 months later, you pull them all into a class, you throw up an account that's blank, it's got all, no students have ever gone through the questions, and you have the whole class raise their hands if they know the answers. And they start going, yeah, I know all 10 commandments. That's true. That's name this just like this. Oh yeah, day 4, turn around, maybe sun, moon, and stars. Oh yeah. And they're surprised at how much they remember. It's just so easy. And you remove their excuses. You think you got any people in your audience that says, I'm too old, I just don't remember things. Kids, they got young minds, not us. You'll be like to know that these PhDs who do the research on memory, almost a zero correlation between age and how well you do. Oh, it's true. The young kids will move it into their 2-week memory faster than you will. But once you get into 2-week memory, it moves on off into that 2-year memory just about as well, just about as easily. Not much difference. You'll also like to know the following. Whether a person has a high school graduate degree or whether they have a PhD, there's not much difference in the way they remember things. Who designed our brains? It wasn't these IQ tests we take, folks. Oh, so-and-so's just bright. I'm just not as smart as they are. Oh, no, folks. Repetition works because God designed our brains. So what's it going to cost you? Well, if I said $100,000, you could go, well, that was good, Jeff, but no. Well, okay, I got to go get 10 PCs. Well, if you give them to use their PC at home, you don't have to. Just give them the little stick, right? Use those at home. They don't have to take their Bible study time if you want to do that. You don't have to call them to do it 3 times during the week at home, but you could do that. It doesn't usually work, though, because they don't usually do it at home. 10 PCs. Do I need a 3 gigahertz PC? No. We use 700 megahertz PCs. We pay $49 for some of them. It costs us $20 to get them shipped, but less than $100 per PC. And that includes the operating system, Windows 2000 Professional. No big deal. Good, cheap computers. CRT monitors, you can get a nice CRT monitor for far less than $10, $15. So therefore, you can get 10 PCs with monitors for $1,300. No problem whatsoever. How much is the software? $200 will get you software for up to 50 students. That's $4 a student. That's pretty cheap, not a problem. What about a network? Well, you don't have to network it at your building, but we did. So therefore, we spent $100 on it, okay? You get these memory sticks for your students, especially ones that miss. Okay, let's say you get one for all 50 students. Less than $10 each, so it's less than $500. But someone's got to be in charge of this, folks. And it's going to take them about 3 hours per week. If you think making up these questions from an apologetic viewpoint is easy, it's not. And it would be very difficult to make up a good apologetic question to come out of the Sunday morning Bible study lesson if I didn't have Gary's notes to go by that you saw presented earlier. That's what makes it easy. And then to go search all over the internet for an image. You know how many images out there you really want to use, but the lady's leg is showing all the way up to here. Or something, oh, come on. But sometimes you can get in a paint program, paint over those parts, and put that up there, okay? Just try to find images, because images really help the kids remember. It really does stick. So for a total of less than $2,100, you can turn around and get results for your congregation. I'm not trying to talk you into doing what we're doing. I'm trying to talk you into joining the team till we can start collaborating and you will improve on anything we've done. You've got to give us feedback. We've got to trade ideas back and forth to get this system going. One congregation, we don't have enough resources to do it, okay? But I just messed that up, sorry. Imagine this. Your son, let's say he's about 14 years of age. A friend of his at school turns around and says, what's the difference between the Old Testament and New Testament? And don't we have to be following everything in both of them? Don't we have to follow the Old Testament? Remember that question you saw earlier? If that image was in your child's mind, would he know how to answer every single detail? And wouldn't that friend go, whoa, when I have a Bible question, I'll ask Johnny, because he knows. It really could help in evangelism also. You see, he would learn there's 3 law systems, the time periods for each, when they're in effect, and what people. There's the beauty I like, though. Imagine you ask these questions, and hands go up all over the room. Doesn't that encourage teachers? If your students could answer it, instead, what do we have? You ask a question, one hand goes up. You see the students behind her? You see them raising their hand? No. What if you can have this, though? Hands going up all over the room because they all knew the answer. Hands going up, they're cheerful about it, they're smiling, they're happy they remembered. Hands, they're joyful. Everyone's remembering his answer, at least 90%. 90% of students who are there at least twice per week that do this will remember 90% of the answers. Or at least 80%. Let us prepare our children to be soldiers for Christ. If you have any questions, we'll take those in a few minutes, but I think I've gone enough over your time.
About 5 minutes. Let me find the remote. Set here. And that way you can answer. Does anyone have any questions about it? See, you did such a good job. Okay. Jeffrey.
I have a question that doesn't pertain to what he's been talking about, but pertains to the previous presentation. We're going to cover the Bible in 5 years.
Gary, you want to come up and answer that? You're going to be covering the Bible in 5 years.
Could you break that down so that I can understand what portion of the Bible you're covering in what time period?
Repeat what you said.
Yes. What?
Repeat.
Okay, the question was, how do you cover the Bible in 5 years? And could we break that down into various portions of time as to what we've done? I can tell you what we've done so far. We spent the first 6 months on Genesis. It took the longest amount of time. And then since that time, we have gone about 7 to 8 to maybe 10 weeks on the books following Genesis. And we are currently, when I get back, I will be doing lesson number 100, which is somewhere in 2 Kings. So I think the first year we got through somewhere about Numbers, maybe around Deuteronomy. In the second year we have gone much faster. Now, I have not looked ahead to see what else is on the disc, but I'm assuming that they cover the poetic sections by sampling. I mean, you're obviously not going to study all 150 Psalms in this. And I would assume that the same thing is true of the major prophets. If you were to go through as we have done the historical section, it would take a lot longer than 5 years. So I'm assuming they're going to do that. And then the New Testament is designed for 2 years, and that sounds doable. So I think probably from Job through Malachi, it's going to be much abbreviated. What?
This is a little bit scary to me. We're a New Testament church. We're having problems with our people not understanding or not being aware of our New Testament heritage. But we're going to spend the next 3 years studying the Old Testament. Mm-hmm. Doesn't make too much sense to me.
Well, you have to understand that is a legitimate criticism. Some people do not want to spend that long a period of time in the Old Testament. But you have to understand that there are many applications to things taught in the New Testament. I mean, during that time, we point out, for example, in Genesis, Jesus quotes from Genesis. He endorses Noah and the flood. Things like that are very helpful in apologetics. We have the example of Nadab and Abihu in respect for Bible authority, which relates under both covenants. We have other principles as we go through. We don't just discuss the historical events, but those historical events are there for a reason. And God just didn't give us a book of historical events, so we'd say, oh, that's nice history. Those things show relationships to God and His people. So there are always applications to things that are discussed in the New Testament. Plus, of course, I've done quite a bit of preaching in the New Testament while we're going through this. So it's not that we totally cut off and divorce the New Testament, but it's still a good point. But there are ways we try to deal with that. Some may not want to go 3 years in the Old Testament all at once, but it seems to be working well. But you can do whatever you want. If you have all the material, you can cover it however you want. That's just how we're doing it.
You get to Genesis 3, the first sin and the promise of the Savior.
Oh yeah.
You're in the New Testament there. I mean, that points. A lot of the Old Testament passages point with New Testament applications. You cannot study properly the Old Testament without making those New Testament applications and those connections. And if you don't, you're not really covering the material.
Right.
From the standpoint of learning from things that are previously written.
Right. You get to Genesis 3. I mean, besides your showing how sin entered the world and the need for salvation, you get that in Genesis 3, and you get many other applications. For example, the evidence for God. Look at what Rahab says in Joshua chapter 2. That nobody could do these things, and we know that He is God. And so you're building up faith, even though you're in the Old Testament. You're building up faith because of what you're seeing and doing. And then, of course, Leviticus, you have the Day of Atonement and New Testament applications to that. So there is a lot as you're going along that you can apply to the New Testament. So we don't exclude that, but rather we encourage the teachers to talk about those things as we go through. It's not a verse-by-verse study. That would be impossible to go through in 5 years. But we try to deal with main principles that we find in all of these chapters. Some are more historical than others, but we always try to draw out the points that have applications. Okay? Did you want somebody to come up and speak here?
If you have a question, come up here. While Paul's coming, if I understand correctly, you have available and will make available, if somebody wants to take back to the congregation, a PowerPoint presentation, and what else can you put on there? Yeah, come on up and there, and then you can ask your question.
I didn't necessarily have a question.
We've left a copy here at the building on his computer of the full software and everything with the questions and everything set up for you. Also, demos you can give to other people. We've got 2 demos. One has 20 questions in it, one only has 6 or 7. It's got the instructions, it's got the manual, the whole thing's there. If you want it for your particular congregation, then please just pay Super Memo for a site license. Okay, and that way, technically speaking, it took me 3 months to pay them. So you can go ahead and set up your system. I told guys, you don't have a way of taking a site license. You say it's available. How do I pay you? It's not on the website. So if they're going back and forth, I already had it set up on our system to work. There's nothing to stop you from making it working straight out of what you can take away from here. But please pay it for their particular effort because it's only $4 each. We also have in the article you can pick up right there the details of what you need to set up. I need to set your screen resolution to 1024 by 768. Minor little details. But please give me a call. We'll give you some of the details. We'll step you through it and help you in any way we can. We need a collaborative effort as best we can.
I'll state the name.
Paul Bond, just a statement. My wife was teaching a class in Brown County, Ohio. So she thought she'd start in the life of Christ. She got into the life of Christ and started learning about Moses and people said, well, who's that? We cannot really appreciate and understand the New Testament without full knowledge of the Old. If you look at John, Gospel of John, chapter 1, when the Jews came to John, they said, are you Elijah? Well, who's Elijah if you don't know the Old Testament? Are you the prophet? Who's the prophet? Well, you got to go back to Moses. Truly, we are at a time when members of the church are biblically ignorant. And we need to know it from cover to cover. And if we focus just in on one part, then we're not going to be balanced in our education of God's Word. In a time of rebuilding, we must strive for balance in education. That's all I was wanting to say, because we have to strive this. Because I've heard these arguments before, and well, we don't need to study the Old Testament. Boy, how impoverished we'd be without the knowledge of Moses and Elijah. And by the way, John quoted Isaiah when he was asked, are you Elijah? Are you the prophet? He said, no, I'm the one crying in the wilderness, make straight the way. No, that was Malachi. I'll get it there. But either way, without knowledge of the Old Testament, truly our young people will not be the type of Christians that they should be, or we will not be either. And we just need to strive to work hard and fulfill our educational responsibilities.
Our time is up. I do appreciate the great job that Brother Rowe did in presenting this. I think you can, at least I, as I see it, can see how this would be very profitable for our brethren if we can get them to do it and participate in it. And then if you get several working together, and as far as congregations and people writing questions and such, we can make it even that much better. I'll get in